Hey again, everyone. Welcome into the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk, representing First Bet and Express Bet. This is our weekly banter show where we take on 5 hot topics in racing. And Jeff, we've got the Haskell in the rearview mirror. Looking forward this week to the Jim Dandy. It's July and we're still talking 3-year-olds.
Because we haven't had a standout in the division yet, although Dornoch looks like he's grabbed control. It's now the championship. I think it's his to win or lose. And of course, we'll see him in the Travers. But 2 good races funneling in to the Travers, and we might have to wait until then to have a definitive champion. But even this division could carry on into the fall with still the Pennsylvania Derby, and then of course whatever 3-year-old might rise up and beat an older horse in a significant race. Good racing, competitive racing, controversial to some extent. So I'm enjoying the ride, and I can't wait for this weekend as well.
Our recaps this week are going to have a huge Monmouth flavor, and also on the West Coast, where it was opening weekend at Del Mar. You were there for that, and we'll talk about some of the big horses to come out of opening weekend at Del Mar as well. Some 2-year-olds to watch, but we start off on the big board. We have a leader. Take me to your leader right now. It looks like maybe it is Dornoch, the winner of the Haskell. He becomes the first 3-year-old in this year's crop to win 2 Grade 1s. Of course, he adds to the Belmont Stakes. Nobody else has paired up Grade 1s. We'll have a fierceness with a chance to do that later this week. But for now, Jeff, it's Dornoch. Set up how the race was won in the Haskell Invitational for us on Saturday at Monmouth Park.
I thought Mindframe was the right horse, and coming into the race and then coming out of it, the margin was 1.25 lengths, and I really think, and I'm not usually a guy who blames riders all that much. I tend to stay away from that, but I really thought Irad Ortiz Jr. Did not give Mindframe his best chance. Now, he made a tactical error, which it's easy to look back at the race and say, okay, it's easy to say now that it didn't work, but he was And before we show the race, I want to set the stage, and then people who didn't notice this, maybe they can look at it closer and come to a similar or different conclusion. But Mindframe drafted in behind the leaders. He was sitting right behind the 3 leaders. He was in a great spot sitting fourth, saving ground along the rail. But more importantly, as they went down the backstretch, you'll see that he's sitting there, just sits. And he's right behind Dornoch, who is not going to back up in his face. I mean, you should know that if you're a jockey. You got to know who's in front of you. And if it's some 50-1 shot, you say, I don't want to get stuck. I'll get off the rail. But that's the leader, and I can just follow him. Instead, what Irad did was he took Mindframe off the rail into the 4 path, and he did it before they hit the far turn. So now the horse is going to go 4 wide, make a premature move. He's going to have to, otherwise he's going to get stuck. And he's going to try to go by 3 horses who are still have plenty of gas in the tank. They're not going to just back out of there. If he had just sat on the rail and followed Dornoch and then angled off the rail at the 3/16 pole, when it certainly would have opened up, he could have come around, whipped out or angled out, and then be right there and have that aim. But to make an extended move wide against Dornoch, you're going to pay the price, because Dornoch, we've seen him, Jeremy. He always seems to have a second punch, especially when he's on the lead or on the rail. And the margin, again, was only 1.25 lengths, and we saw that Mindframe kind of ran out of steam the last part, but not unexpectedly as far as I'm concerned, given the trip. So if I'm, the trainer or the bat owner, I got to say, why don't you just sit there? You would have opened up, and you would have lost ground, and you would have been right on his heels before you asked your horse. Anyway, take a look at the race. Maybe you'll disagree. That's fine. But I thought Mindframe, again, just like he blew his best chance last time out in the Belmont, where he went way, way wide and then got brutalized with the whip.
Yeah.
I'm not sold that Mindframe couldn't have won both races.
Let's go back to the replay. We're going to take you gate to wire. Matt Ditterman with the call, his first voyage call on the Haskell at Monmouth.
We're ready to go. And they're off. And the Naira Betts Haskell. Mindframe bobbled coming out of there. He's recovered, though. And Dornock from the inside post. Offensive-minded. Has a head lead. Timberlake off the layoff is fresh. A little bit keen and moves level. In the third spot is the Park Shipper. Just step on it. Mindframe gets over towards the rail to run in the fourth position. He's 2 lengths ahead of C-Streak. Then Jasper's Pride. And Tuscan Sky, sluggish early. Gets a couple taps of the crop to get going. Is well out of it as they make their way around the clubhouse turn. And Dornock setting the pace, the Belmont winner, a half length in front. Timberlake right there to press the issue. Just step on it is third, 3 deep, and Mindframe is in a pocket, fourth to the inside. 2.5 lengths off the lead, swinging up the backstretch. C-Streak a length behind him, a gap of 3 to Jasper's Pride, and still a big gap back to Tuscan Sky as they head down the backstretch. Dornock setting a moderate pace, 3/4 of a length ahead. Timberlake going okay in the second position. Just step on it. Remains 3 wide. Mindframe attempting to get off the rail. He's got a clear path now. Finds that clear path. Takes fourth. 2.5 lengths off the lead. Is 4 wide going into the turn. C-Streak is next. The others are well out of it. Here comes the race. The race is on now. Dornock set to long. Mindframe moving up ominously. Here's Mindframe and Irad Ortiz Jr. going strong. Dornock set to long, but he's lost the lead. Attempts to re-rally. Timberlake and an all-out drive between them. It's Mindframe confidently handled. Switches leads and gets the cue to go. Dornock is trying hard, but he's left behind in second, fighting back from the inside. Mindframe, Dornock coming back. They're at it again. The 2 Belmont first and second place finishers. 1-2, and Dornock stubborn. Dornock wins the Haskell. Presented by
I'll tell you what, Dornock, that looked a lot like the last time in the Belmont Stakes. It looked a lot like his game effort coming back and re-rallying against Sierra Leone last year in the Remsen. So this isn't like something new with Dornock. We've seen this, extended now 7-8 months throughout the course of his racing career. The left-handed stick, as soon as Luis Saez went to it in the stretch, it seemed that he responded to that on the inside and had a little bit more left. Final 3 furlongs, though, Jeff, 38-1, not that fast for a 1 1/8, especially after going 48 1/12 through the splits. This was the 5th slowest race ever in the Haskell Invitational. Not very fast, but they actually went faster than Tappet Trice went, and we'll talk about him in a little bit, in the Monmouth Cup. So it was not a fast track at Monmouth. You just maybe would expect him to come home a little bit more visually impressive after the soft fractions. But it was a game effort. I'm just not wowed by either of these horses on the top 2 here.
I think they're good horses. I don't think they're great. We're usually looking at potential great horses at this time of the year among the 3-year-olds, horses that have matured, developed, gotten older and stronger and better. These horses are basically the same. They're good. They're consistent. I'll give them that. Yeah. But I don't know whether or not these horses, unless they produce another forward move, and they'll have a couple of more chances, at least one anyway in the Travers to do that. But it's kind of a funny division right now. I'm trying to latch on to somebody, and I haven't been able to do it. And then what will really confuse me it will be if Fierceness goes out this weekend and runs off the screen. Then I don't know what to do with him, because I certainly don't want to back him with confidence, even though I know on his best day he could win, and we saw that last year's Breeders' Cup. So it's a little unsettling right now, but in a way interesting as well, because there are ways to evaluate these horses, and we're not nearly done doing that yet. So looking forward to the Travers.
We know what we're going to get with Dornock. Mindframe, we're starting to feel like after the last 2, maybe that's what we're going to get. Maybe he doesn't want to go that far. The mile
that's a possibility,
the 1 1/8 here, that's a real question. But he's only had 4 career starts, so there is some more ceiling for him. Now, the horses that are going to run in the Jim Dandy this week get a chance to make their second half impression. Sierra Leone, 3rd in the Belmont, 2nd in the Kentucky Derby, of course, by a nose. Seize the Gray, the Preakness winner, threw a flat tire in the Belmont Stakes. He'll try to get back on the beam. Should be some pace in this year's Jim Dandy. Batten Down, Pony Express, Gould's Gold, Seize the Gray. You basically got Sierra Leone from off the pace. Fierceness could be right up in it. And everybody else kind of wants to go in the Jim Dandy, I think, other than Sierra Leone. And a mile and an eighth at Saratoga, that's what you want, a very short run into the first turn. Remember, 9 furlong oval there at Saratoga. So the mile and an eighth races start with a short run to the first turn. Position will be important. Seize the Gray essentially will have the fence. Sierra Leone's not going to break out of there. So Seize the Gray's got the fence under Jaime Torres again. They'll probably just try to go to the front like they did in the Preakness Stakes. But there should be some contention amongst this field. Already drawn and ready to go. David Aragona, morning line maker for Naira's, got Sierra Leone at even money. I think Fierceness at 8 or 9 to 5 as the second choice. I believe 9 to 5 it was on the morning line. Can't argue with that. I think Sierra Leone will go favored in here. Jeff, what do you make early look of the Jim Dandy?
It really sets up for Sierra Leone. I mean, Pony Express, who just broke his maiden, they're committed to going to the front if they can. They're not going to sit third or fourth and outfinish anybody. So if he can get loose in the lead, if they don't respect him, he might force everybody else to go a little faster than they want to. Batten Down won his last 2 races, Gate to Wire, but he doesn't need the lead to win. I wonder how committed they're going to be with him. On the other hand, if they take him back and no pace materializes, then you've given him not his best chance. Fierceness is outside; he can kind of dictate his trip, but he's failed when he's had some good trips, and I don't know that I trust him. But I will say this: Fierceness has trained really, really well. That's the good news. The bad news is he always trains well, so I don't know what that means. He's going to bounce back. And I watched Sierra Leone had a breeze at Saratoga in the 49 the other day, and he had his head cocked. I mean, I don't think there's any change in his form going to happen. Now, it doesn't mean he couldn't or even shouldn't win. I'm not saying that. But I'm looking – he does the same thing. He leans in. Even in the morning by himself, there's no change in what he's going to do other than maybe Pratt, who rode him for the first time last time in the Belmont. Maybe he learned something. I don't know. But it's going to be an interesting race because very little, if anything, would surprise me in that race. I've seen a race like this where the maiden gets loose and keeps going. That's a decent sort of horse for Pony Express, Gunrunner Colford Sadler. But I wouldn't be doing this with him. But take a shot and go for the grade 2, and maybe he gets loose. I don't know. Interesting race.
One of the rising players you mentioned, Batten Down off back-to-back wins, one at Churchill the week before the Derby, and then came back at Thistle and won the Ohio Derby last time. He'll get a 1-2 rematch with the horse Gould's Gold, who was second in the Ohio Derby. Let's give fans a chance to see that one from Thistle a couple months back.
Top of the stretch, and it's Batten Down a length and a half in front. Catching Freedom comes under a drive. Gould's Gold and Catching Freedom come together there. They're chasing Batten Down. 1 furlong to go. Batten Down with the lead. Catching Freedom trying to catch him. Gould's Gold still with a chance, and Copper Tax with late run. But Batten Down is still in front. Batten Down, wire to wire in the Ohio Derby.
Batten Down, one of the contenders in the Jim Dandy Stakes. But again, Sierra Leone expected to go favored in there. Maybe third choice for Batten Down. Will compete for third money, I think, with Seize the Gray, of course, the Preakness Stakes winner in there. But definitely the top 2 favorites. Sierra Leone will be the chalk. Fierceness will be the second choice in there. We'll see if the public's got it right. A little speed, a little closer. Should be an interesting running of the Jim Dandy. And maybe it'll give us a little more divisional clarity than what we saw in the Haskell, where, again, we just kind of had a replay of the Belmont Stakes of the top 2 finishers in there in a race that didn't have a lot of depth. This race here's got at least 2 major contenders, 3 major contenders in it, major grade 1 type winners in the field, and Batten Down could be that kind of quality. We'll see. And some of the other class risers as well. Not the deepest field, but I think a little deeper field than what we saw in the Haskell, even though we're running for half the money, $500,000 in the Jim Dandy on Saturday.
Jeremy, a lot of people were writing about why do they have these 2 identical races back to back? They're so close together. Right. But I kind of like it this way because it gives 2 major races a chance to funnel into the Travers, Right. And when you look at this race, if Sierra Leone were to win this race and then come back and win the Travers, then he'd have a legitimate claim, to be the champion. And you'd like to have the championship on the line on these late summer races.
Mhm.
So I don't mind having divisions here, funneling into a championship. It's fine with me,
And many years they were on the same weekend. Jim Dandy Saturday, then on Sunday was the
Right.
Haskell, and it was a good road trip for people on the East Coast
Sure.
to hit both of those races in the same weekend. I know we did that for ESPN on some coverage over the years, where we were in Saratoga for Saturday and then down the shore to Haskell Day on Sunday the same weekend. Let's go back to Saratoga for our second topic on the board this week, and she could be a number one in the 3-year-old crop. Torpedo Anna, the Kentucky Oaks winner, the Acorn winner. She was back at it in the Coaching Club American Oaks last Saturday at Saratoga. And if there was any question who's best in the 3-year-old filly ranks, she left them behind her again.
Brian Hernandez Jr. hasn't moved, and they're in front at the quarter pole. 6 furlongs in 1:11.4. Candide will make her bid on the outside. They're at the top of the stretch, and Torpedo Anna has a 3-length lead. Candide is trying her best to close the gap, and Intricate picking it up from behind, but it's all Torpedo Anna. The leader of the division is simply spectacular in the Coaching Club American Oaks. She'll win for fun by 4.5 lengths over Candide. Intricate third. Leslie's Rose was fourth.
Who's left in the division who's going to knock her out? It better be somebody who steps up from where we haven't seen them yet, like a major class riser who gets good, an Arrowgate kind of 3-year-old filly during the second half of the season, because what's out there and what's tried her can't handle her. She's won every race by daylight this year. She's only had the one loss in her career, and that was the Intricate last year in the Golden Rod. You saw Intricate can't warm her up as a 3-year-old, in a couple tries now. So it's Torpedo Anna and everybody else in the 3-year-old filly division, Jeff. And this was as good as any of her other performances.
And what we didn't show in that race was that she didn't break at all. I mean, she broke slowly, hit the gate, spotted the field a couple of lengths. But what was so impressive to me was that it didn't bother Torpedo Anna in any way. She just kind of cruised up in there, switched off beautifully. Sometimes even if you do that, you pay the price in the final furlong because you spent some energy catching up. But you can see in that video that she relaxed down the backstretch. You never know for sure after a slow break how much you're going to have left when the pressure's turned on, but didn't phase her in the least. She's now won 6 out of 7 with 1 second, as you pointed out, and she's winning by daylight. She's just the smallest margin of victory in all of her race wins with 4 lengths. So she's never been challenged really other than the race that she finished second in. But now there's talk that she's going to run in the Travers. I'm against it. It's not my horse. So I have no input in it. But I'd like to see Torpedo Anna continue to win and continue to win without having to exert a lot of energy. That will keep her going for a longer time. So many of these fillies, almost all of these fillies that take on the boys, even if they win, they aren't the same. Rachel wasn't. Rachel's good, don't get me wrong, but she wasn't quite Rachel after she tackled the boys. So, I mean, to me, I hope that she's given a chance to keep winning, and then we'll see her in the Breeders' Cup against the fillies and the distaff. That would be fun. If you want to get creative with her next year, okay, fine, but not now. I'd like to see her be able to continue beating up on these fillies and not having to really extend herself to do it.
Yeah, I mean, she's a fast Anna filly. She's not this, multi-million-dollar broodmare prospect pedigree, right? But based on her performance, she's obviously going to command a high dollar when that part of her career comes. But to your point, we don't have to get in a rush to get there based on her pedigree. So let's take the more conservative route now. Keep building her up. I think the Cotillion's like $1 million race in September that would be perfect for her. There's no sense taking on even older fillies at this point, and maybe first shot against the older fillies and mares comes in the Breeders' Cup distaff and then have a great 4-year-old season. And like you said, if you want to take on the boys later, do so. We've already had this conversation with her. It was between the Kentucky Oaks and the Belmont Stakes, and Kenny McPeak was, teetering with the idea of running her in the Belmont off of her Kentucky Oaks when they didn't go in the Belmont for one particular reason. Kentucky Derby winner Mystic Dan was in that field. Well, now that Mystic Dan is sidelined and maybe for the rest of the season, That's no reason to make Torpedo Anna a Travers horse, right? I mean,
Right.
her plan should either be I'm a Travers horse and it's the right thing for her, or it's not. It shouldn't be based on whether or not there's another horse in the barn who's capable of filling that slot and you can go somewhere else with her. She's not an either or kind of horse. She is the horse. So if the Travers is right for her, then the Travers is right for her. But if Mystic Dan were to be healthy and he was pointed at that race, she wouldn't be in there. And I don't like the fact that she would be an either or kind of decision. Okay, Mystic Dan's not there, so let's go with her maybe in the Travers. I think the best path for her is, like you said, be an outstanding 4-year-old. Look, she could be a good 3-year-old filly and win the Breeders' Cup Distaff. We've seen that throughout recent history. Some of these top 3-year-old fillies in recent years have won the Distaff as a 3-year-old. And where does she stack up with the best fillies we've seen as 3-year-olds over the last, decade or two? There's a lot of talk on X amongst horse players and horse racing Twitter that, she's the best since Rachel Alexandra. Well, we went back to Rachel Alexandra and I tried to put them in a little bit of a category. That's the Jim Dandy field. Let me get the right graphic up here. This is the graphic we're looking for here. The Torpedo Anna taking on the recent champion 3-year-old fillies. I put him in this kind of category since Rachel Alexandra in 2009. There's a handful of really elite ones, Hall of Fame type fillies. Rachel Alexandra, Beholder, Songbird, Royal Delta. Then you get like Monomoy Girl, Untappable. These are 3-year-old fillies who won as 3-year-olds in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Some really good ones along the way. Of course, Swiss Skydiver won a Preakness when it was moved to the fall. Malathot, Abel Tasman, Blind Luck. And then we had some others who just had a good season, like Pretty Mischievous last year, questing back in 2012. Where do we think Torpedo Anna stacks up when we look? Okay, you want to say she's the best since Rachel Alexandra? Prove it. This is the list. Where would she fit?
Well, I don't think she's done enough and beaten anybody that would qualify her as being elite yet. Now that's why I would love to see her stay within her division and get that chance. I mean, she's certainly a terrific 3-year-old. We know that. And if she wants to become a Rachel or a Beholder who won the Pacific Classic, or Songbird, Royal Delta was fantastic, any of those fillies on the elite side, I think there's a possibility that Torpedo Anna will eventually join that list, but not yet. She's still got work to do, so to speak. I would say at worst that she's outstanding, but I think she really is outstanding, and that's the low end of it. But if she were to run in the Travers, then okay, yeah, put her in elite, but I don't want her whole career compromised by doing something that will stress her out. And but those are some very good fillies, terrific fillies who did a lot as they were 4-year-old. I mean, Beholder was great, but she was greater as an older mare. So, I mean, I think she's got work to do, but she's got a chance.
One thing this list does, it tells us we've been blessed with some really, really good 3-year-old fillies who then did stick around to become really good older mares too. So while we, wax nostalgic about the days when the great 3-year-olds would stick around at 4 and 5 and be great, we've been blessed with some outstanding fillies. And so while one division has been a little bit light, the handicap division in, recent decades, the filly and mare division has been outstanding, and it's kind of carried the torch for the superstars in the Hall of Fame caliber. Like, you see the number of Hall of Famers on that list compared to what we would see from champion 3-year-old colts who became Hall of Famers. And I think you could see that the fillies have really, really held their own in that respect. Let's go to our third topic this week on It's Official, the Breeders' Cup Tracker. We're going to start looking at races towards the Breeders' Cup coming up this fall at Del Mar. A couple races on the undercard. Haskell Day on the Jersey Shore on Saturday at Monmouth get the spotlight. Last year's champion older mare, Idiomatic. We talk about these good older mares. Well, she's back again at age 5 this year. And Idiomatic and the Molly pitcher, she had to work hard for the money.
Sullivan Angel and Irad Ortiz. Idiomatic looks like she's going to have to work for today. She's coming right back. Sullivan Angel, a neck in front. Idiomatic needs to find more. She is, though. Idiomatic on the inside. Resilient, showing that determination. She's showing why she's a champion. Sullivan Angel has run the race of her life. Sullivan Angel, Idiomatic in a spine-tingling stretch drive. And it's a photo finish that went to Idiomatic.
Soul of an Angel reminded me of Soul of the Matter going head to head with Cigar in the Dubai World Cup way back when, you had the big name horse and the horse who really you wouldn't think would be able to warm up that kind of caliber of a mare. So was it a career performance for Soul of an Angel? Probably yes. But are we looking at the south side of the best of Idiomatic, Jeff? She was really last year just a win machine. This year, she just looks a little bit mortal to me.
Well, she got I mean, I'll give her credit. I mean, you really have to. You can see why she'd won 10 out of 14 going into this race, because when push comes to shove, she always seems to find that reserve energy that only the great ones have. Now, she got beat ahead last time in the fifths and got a rather unfortunate head bob that day.
Yeah.
And she didn't get a great trip that day. So I thought, okay, she's in a grade 3 here. I mean, and at equal weights, so or pretty much with Soul of an Angel had the same weight as Simon 124. You would have thought that if she was as good now as she was last year, that she would have had an easier time of it. She worked hard. I give her credit for finding a way to win when she was not at her best. But I wonder, even though her record now stands at 11 wins from 15 starts with 2 seconds and 2/3, whether or not she's not quite as good. And I wonder if, Torpedo Anna just takes it easy and comes to Del Mar with Idiomatic there. I'm not sure this version of Idiomatic would be able to beat Torpedo Anna. And there's others in the division as well at Dare Manor. So I was very impressed and very happy to see her win. But in retrospect, I don't know how much confidence I have now, based on her last 2 races, that she's as good now as she was last year.
I think a really important point about Idiomatic is the want to is still there.
Yeah.
She was determined last time, just like you said, a bad head bob. She was definitely determined. The want to is there. And as mares get older, we hear it often that they've just lost the will to run anymore and it's time to go to the breeding shed. That doesn't seem to be the case. It just looks like she's a pitcher who used to throw 98 miles an hour fastball. And now she's clocking in at 94. She's just not quite as sharp as she was. But I'll say this too. Last year, while she was running out that win streak, she was bubbling under the radar. And I know we talked about her on this show a couple times throughout the summer of like, hey, there's this filly who just won a Delaware handicap that nobody's really talking about. And all of a sudden she won another one and another one. And then she got to the Breeders' Cup and it was just kind of like, yeah, she's got a great record, but is she that good? I mean, we've seen some really great, mares over, and we saw that big list of the 3-year-old fillies who came on to be Hall of Fame type mares. I had questions whether or not she was really that good going into last year's Breeders' Cup. Then she won the Breeders' Cup distaff, and you had to just say, okay, she is. The record speaks for itself. She had a horse of the year kind of campaign last year when you look at the races she won and the way she did it. But she's never kind of just blown the socks off of everybody, and maybe she just isn't quite as good as the record looked last year. Maybe what she's doing this year is similar to what she was doing last year, but she's just not getting the same kind of results. She's on the wrong end of some narrow finishes. But today, or on Saturday, she was on the right end of it by a nose. Look, we're splitting hairs. Like you said, what is she, 11 for 15 lifetime, right?
So crowd here, right?
Yeah, right. But, she's gone from Nolan Ryan to J.R. Richard or whatever for 1980s baseball fans, she's gone from throwing 107 to 102, I'm being tough on her, but I just don't think she's quite that elite level like maybe we thought coming into this 5-year-old season.
Well, the last time she earned a triple-digit buyer number was in the Spinster at Keeneland last October. She's run now 4 times since then. She's not as fast on numbers, so I think if whatever number system you use, you'd see a slippage. But you don't see a slippage in that last 50 yards.
No. If she's in it, she's going to fight you. That's, I said, the want to hasn't gone away, and that's what's great. So by no means am I saying she's done or washed up, but she can be beaten. She can be had.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at that win streak last year and the numbers she put together, you'd say, Idiomatic's in here. I'm going to go look for a different race. I think she can be had by a good horse, and when we get to the Breeders' Cup this year, we're going to find out.
Well, that's why if I have Torpedo Anna, I'm looking at Idiomatic. I'm saying, I think I can beat her. Now, maybe she's a fall horse and she'll blossom later on. But right now, I don't have to run from her, so I don't run away from her. So, hey, even when you win, you still have something to prove. It seems like,
Yeah.
and Idiomatic will be entered next time wherever it may be, and
Probably
you
a
and I will
personal
be
instance.
discussing. Yeah, and we'll be talking about, is she vulnerable? And I think both of us will say, at a short price, probably. And that's next time. But right now,
Yep.
I still tip my hat to her.
And there's still Adair Manor on the West Coast for a home
Yeah.
game at Del Mar, potentially in the Distaff division. What a great lineup we could have in the Breeders' Cup Distaff this year. Now, we're saying Idiomatic might not be quite as good as she was last year. The other horse we want to talk about on the Breeders' Cup tracker this week, we had no idea what to expect from him in his 4-year-old debut. We had not seen Tappet Trice since last year. I mean, it had been a long layoff, almost the full calendar year since Tappet Trice had been doing much. He came back on the undercard in the Monmouth Cup at Haskell Day, and this race, I didn't know what to expect from it, but coming out of it, now I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with him, because he may be one of the top horses in the Classic division.
Tappet Trice in the 3-path comes looking for the lead, has the head in front. Counter Spy retreats to second, and then comes Kozaris on the far outside. Unleashed is all in. Highland Falls is struggling in 6th. Florent Giroux imploring him to get going. Tappet Trice has taken a commanding lead as he shakes away to the roar from the crowd. He's opened up 3, and second Counter Spy. Highland Falls getting going, but it's way too late behind the front-running Tappet Trice, who's back in style, and his 2024 debut was awesome.
Really nice return there. Went faster the last 3 furlongs than what we saw in the Haskell. That stride, he's a big loping, like a deer running in there. And that's the way he was last year as a 3-year-old. And you always thought if this horse ever puts it together, he could be something good. He had some moments in the Bluegrass and in some other races last year, but this is a promising prospect, the one who was kind of forgotten about, honestly, in my viewpoint. I'm looking around at this Breeders' Cup Classic division and saying, where's that up-and-comer going to come from? He kind of feels White Abarrio-ish right now, because White Abarrio was a good 3-year-old, had his moments, Florida Derby, but then came back at 4, and then all of a sudden from the Whitney on, there's 2 big races that he ran, the Whitney and the Breeders' Cup Classic. I could see something like that for a 2 or 3 race campaign here for Tappet Trice that results in him being a Breeders' Cup Classic horse.
I think so. I mean, this is the first start since the Travers. He ran well in the Travers. He was 3rd that day. He had run in, 5 consecutive grade 1 races. He was not dodging anybody.
Right.
But he did strike me as a colt that would be a late developer. And the best thing that happened to him was that they turned him out. They tried to bring him back a couple of times. Fletcher, he entered him on May 3rd. He had another race he entered and scratched in on June 1st. So it's taken him a while to shake the cobwebs and the issues that he obviously had. But he was good here. This was a good confidence-building win.
Yep.
He was also closer to the pace than we expect him to be. You all kind of thought of him as kind of being a deep closer type of horse. I don't think he's got that massive of a kick. I think he needs to be fairly close, not in front, but somewhere in the middle, so he doesn't have that much distance to make up. I was impressed. I know beating Highland Falls doesn't prove a whole lot, but it's a good comeback race. And if he's going to be a good 4-year-old, he's going to have that opportunity now in that older division to make a lot of hay. And maybe by the time the Breeders' Cup Classic by November here at Del Mar, over a track that generally I think the Rally Widers do well there, which is what Tappet Trice wants to be. He's got a chance to be that kind of horse. We'll find out more about him next time.
9 furlongs, a tough comeback distance. So he was above expectation in that one. We talked about it in our Friday handicapping podcast, First Call, that, he looked like he'd be a horse who would be an underlay in that spot, that was a tough assignment first time back, and he responded to it and ran really well. Let's go to our 4th topic this week on It's Official, and we're going to go off track for this one. They're fast friends again. Who are we talking about? How about Churchill Downs Incorporated and Bob Baffert? They're back together again. Everybody's happy. Bob has apologized. He's met all the terms of contrition that Churchill Downs Incorporated demanded of him after their suspension. Now, after missing the last, 3 Kentucky Derby editions, Bob Baffert is now welcome again immediately to Churchill Downs properties to run his horses. And moving forward, the suspension stemming from Medina Spirit's disqualification in the Kentucky Derby. I also should mention, too, Gamine was suspended the year before in the Kentucky Oaks for a medication infraction. So it was back-to-back years in Churchill's 2 signature races that was kind of a build-up and a straw that broke the camel's back in their estimation. But certainly the Derby is the big brand that they did not want tarnished. And the medication infraction from Medina Spirit and subsequent disqualification certainly did tarnish the brand of the Kentucky Derby. So, Jeff, now that everybody's made up, they've had friends, they're going to break bread and, have a glass of wine together from here to 4. We're in the game of who won and who lost, right? I mean, we're horse players. We want to know who won and who lost. So in the game CDI v. Baffert, who came away the winner?
Well, I think if Baffert was going to take all blame for this, he could have done that 3 years ago just as easily. And maybe things would have turned out differently. But he did not have a good group of 3-year-olds the last couple of years. So for him not to be able to run at Churchill, I don't think it hurt him too much. You can see as this graphic points out, during the Derby ban in 2022 through 24, I don't think he really had any great horses. I don't think he lost any Derbies, any Kentucky Derbies that he could have won had the ban not been there. You know, Churchill Downs flexed their muscle, so to speak. They laid the law down and they showed who was boss. But there are other elements involved here with other factors that maybe aren't apparent, such as maybe they wanted to get into the running of the Breeders' Cup possibility, and Breeders' Cup said, yeah, but Baffert's running. I don't even know if Churchill would have even any jurisdiction over that, because basically Breeders' Cup takes the track for that weekend. So I don't know what was in play here. All I can say is that even though Bob Baffert maybe would not have won any Kentucky Derbies in that interim time, it's going to embolden him now, because he's going to not only be able to know that he can move his horses around and get points, but as many good 3-year-old prospects as he almost always has, he's going to have even more next year, because those owners know they can go that route again.
Right.
So they say, I'll send it to Baffert if he's got 15 others that have a right to be there, which he will, by the way. That's okay, but it won't impact my chances of getting there if I have a good enough horse. So it's gotten to a point now where our Derby division here is Bob Baffert and anybody else who is foolish enough to buy a lot of expensive horses and try to beat them, because they never can, they never will, not for the foreseeable future, because Bob lives for the Derby. This is all he really cares for. Breeders' Cup is fine, but the Derby is what he wants. And it's going to, like I say, embolden him to kind of taking anybody that he thinks is capable of getting there. And that means 10, 15 prospects under one roof. I don't know.
Right. That's the West Coast scene, right? Like you said, it's Baffert and everybody else. And around the country, they'll match up and go through the Derby Trail next year and see who gets to Louisville on the first Saturday in May, and whether it'll be Bob Baffert back in the winner's circle this year, or a continuation of some years without Baffert in the race, and maybe Baffert won't be back in the winner's circle anytime soon. We shall see. As far as the winners and losers, when we talk about this dispute, certainly in the court of public opinion, there's pluses and minuses, right? Churchill Downs has their haters. They also have their lovers. They've got a record stock price right now. It's a publicly held company. Advantage Churchill. I think they got the reputation of the Kentucky Derby solidified in that they're not going to let anyone step on that race in terms of medications and things like that. So I think they won a little bit in that regard. And of course, record handle and big attendance numbers are back for the Kentucky Derby. So Churchill lost nothing out of this. Now, again, in the court of public opinion, there are some people that are mad at them for what they did. They were probably vindictive for adding another year to the ban. The 2-year ban was added to 3 this year. For no reason other than he didn't show enough contrition and admit his mistakes. Now that he's done that, we all move on. I would have to think that Breeders' Cup has a little bit of play in it, because I felt that Baffert might be closer to a lifetime ban than actually getting back, because if Churchill held out that long, why did they need him back once they saw stock numbers are high? handle is all-time record. Attendance numbers are huge again. They didn't need Baffert back, So why the change now? I think it might have something to do with trying to lure Breeders' Cup back. We'll see. Breeders' Cup has big influence like that. You think about Keeneland in the synthetic era, switching to the dirt in order to lure the Breeders' Cup there in 2015. And so that can be a big factor for, extending the quality and the brand of your racetrack beyond a singular day, beyond the Kentucky Derby. Having the Breeders' Cup isn't a big financial stake for a racetrack, but it's a great postcard to have, right? I mean, Breeders' Cup makes all the money when you host the race there. They come in, they run the facility and all that. You don't make much as a track. In fact, it's a headache to host the Breeders' Cup as a racetrack, but it's a postcard that you can't buy. I mean, it's a fabulous full postcard for bringing people to your facility, to being on national TV and all that goes with that. So the world comes to see you at the Breeders' Cup, and that's a good thing for the brand. Maybe Churchill Downs gets back into the Breeders' Cup mix now. We'll keep our eyes and ears out for that potential news. Bob Baffert, he's back in the news with the move towards returning to the Triple Crown. Who might he show up there with? Well, our stars of tomorrow waste no time getting to some potential horses for next May, because it was opening weekend at Del Mar this past week. And if you know anything about Del Mar, it's 2-year-old racing, and it's Bob Baffert's dominance. He put him in the getaway car on opening day Saturday. Check out this first-time winner.
They are coming to the top of the lane, and Getaway Car finds more on the lead and kicks for home. Chased by Smash It in second. Smash It is running a game one, but Getaway Car rider taking a confident look behind him. And Juan Hernandez knew what he had there. Getaway Car in a smashing victory. Getaway Car wins it by 4 in the end. Smash It will be second.
So what do you make of this one, Jeff? You were there, Getaway Car. How impressed?
Well, first of all, he just ran 5/8 and 57 and 2 as a 2-year-old, first time out. And he's by Curlin. So I don't think he's really, he's a quick colt. He's a smallish kind of colt. Looks more like a sprinter. His dam was very fast, surrender now. So maybe he's cut out to win a lot of races early and maybe wouldn't be considered to be a classic type colt. But he's a good mover. He's a good athlete. He trained well. They hadn't really asked him to run much in the morning, but he did everything so nicely. Bet down to 6-5 and won like it. Smash It had a private prior run. It was a pretty good field there. So onward and upward. That's Baffert's first starter at Del Mar, and he'll have a half a dozen more that'll look just as good, I'm sure. Already this year, he's won with first-time starters. He had a horse named Noonie, a filly, and then there was another one, Midland Money, who's really good. Both of those graduated 2-year-olds at first asking, late at Santa Anita in June, and they look terrific as well. And then he had another one with a weekend that would look just as impressive as any of them. He is absolutely loaded, and I guarantee you, as good as these 4 have looked so far, there are others in the barn that are better. And that's a scary thought.
He's got a filly, a 2-year-old, who debuted a day later. We saw Getaway Car on Saturday. The filly Kazaloo debuted on Sunday. Maybe she's got Oaks aspirations down the line.
Kazaloo's in front, but only a half a length. On the outside, 2 bars comes to take her on. Clapping Trees is in there. And here's Ovita's Hobby with a nice run, 2 in the green, a little bit tight down at the rail. Now flattening out, and it's going to be Kazaloo clear now. Kazaloo is striding away from them. It looked tight for a while, but her class shows in the end. And Kazaloo and Juan Hernandez win it in canter by 6 lengths in the end.
The sharper of the 2 maybe there, Jeff?
I don't know. She's good. She's by a horse named Caracaro. You remember him? He was a good 3-year-old.
Mike Mikowski. I actually thought he was a Derby horse at one time. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, she wins for fun. She was bet down at 3-5. The genius here, Morning Line Maker, didn't make her the Morning Line favorite, so what do I know? But she ran very well. And again, he's got so many of these. He's getting the ones that are ready. He's running them when they're ready to run, obviously. They're not waiting. But there are a few others who aren't quite set yet, but will surface. He's going to have 2 in every maiden special weight race. They try to run a maiden special weight for colts and fillies at least once a week, because it's a short meeting, and a lot of guys want to utilize the event and the purses that are offered. So I think, like I say, he's spaces them out. Bob does, but he's probably got 10 waiting to run, and now it's just a matter of, where he wants to go with them. But that's a good feeling. And again, out of Medaglia d'Oro mare, she's got a pedigree that should allow her to go a middle distance. They don't run any route races for 2-year-olds at Del Mar other than on grass. So Bob doesn't run on grass. So he's got to get the quick ones out of the way, and then we'll see what happens when Santa Anita gets back in action in September.
Week 2 at Del Mar on tap Thursday through Sunday this week. Saratoga's got a Wednesday through Sunday schedule. If you want to get up to date with those, we've got a weekly scouting report with updated stats and trends and horses to watch throughout the course of the week. Be sure to check those out at the blog section, expressbet.com. And at news.first.com, Jeff also has daily handicapping selections for both tracks with his best bets each racing day. So check those out race morning right after scratches and changes come out with those final postings. Let's take a look at this week's topics. We have a leader in the 3-year-old division. Finally, a 2-time Grade 1 winner. It's Dornoch, winner of the Belmont Stakes, and most recently, the winner of the Haskell. We'll see if that leaderboard shifts a little bit after we looked ahead to this Saturday's edition of the Jim Dandy, featuring horses like Sierra Leone and Fierceness. Torpedo Destruction, it's Torpedo Anna. She's just rolling through now, 6 for 7 lifetime. We reviewed her win in the Coaching Club American Oaks, another 4+ length victory for her. Should she go in the Travers? We both say no. We want to see her get to the Breeders' Cup Distaff later this year and have a big-time 4- and 5-year-old campaign down the road as a star mare. Our Breeders' Cup tracker took you to that Distaff division at Monmouth in the Molly Pitcher, where last year's Breeders' Cup Distaff winner, Idiomatic, was a hard-fought winner at 10 cents on the dollar. Capit Trice, first time starting since last year's Travers, came back with a good-looking win, eye-catching in the Grade 3 Monmouth Cup. He could be a Breeders' Cup Classic Division late bloomer this year in his first start as a 4-year-old. Fast Friends again, we talked about the on-again, off-again relationship between Churchill Downs and Bob Baffert. They're on. We're looking forward to seeing if Baffert's back in this year's Kentucky Derby. You can almost expect that coming up in 2025. And our stars of tomorrow featured 2 from Baffert. Getaway Car, Colt winning on Saturday. And Casalu, Casalu. Put it in your horses to watch. Casalu, filly, who won on Sunday at Del Mar. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's how we play the game, and we'll re-rack them and do it all again next week with 5 more topics on our Tuesday show. Jeff and I will be back on Friday. Friday, we do a first call podcast where we handicap 8 stakes races for the upcoming weekend. Certainly going to have a big Saratoga and Del Mar influence this weekend again, Jeff.
Yeah, some great racing this weekend. One note, I've watched, obviously, the first 2 racing days at Del Mar, and it brings back memories of the 70s for me because Inside Speed was absolutely dominant. It was the way Del Mar used to be when I was growing up and going to the track. And all you do is you handicap from the rail out. And if you liked the number 1 horse, you never had to go any farther. Farther than that because they had the jet stream, we used to call it. And then it changed around and it was rally wide and all. But if the track is going to be like this all meeting, I'd like to know about it anyway. Right. And it was pro speed, pro inside, pretty glib. It could change, so you gotta go to school early in the day because you never know when it's going to switch over and revert to what it's been for the last several years. So, but good racing at Del Mar. They had a lot of big fields. That was fun. Saratoga is always good. So, looking forward to another really great weekend of racing.
One of my stops in my career was being a mutual manager at an OTB, and we used to have a player who swore by the rail bias at fairgrounds. He would come in during his lunch hour. He owned a local business. He would come in during his lunch hour when he thought the bias was prevalent and just bet 100 to win on the 1 in every fairgrounds race that was on the dirt and walk out for the day. So when the bias is real, jump in and get after it often, Jeff's saying. Maybe we'll see how that continues when they resume racing at Del Mar. But the one thing, if you're handicapping and you're playing track biases, the one thing that can really stop a track bias, the end of a racing week, because there's a lot of track maintenance that goes on between the end of one week and the start of a next one. So keep an eye, see how the rail plays Inside Speed at Del Mar when they resume racing on Thursday. But if you catch that early in a week, chances are there's not going to be a lot of track maintenance while a race week is in progress, and it'll continue throughout the course of a week, and then the correction will come during the dark days. So we'll see how it plays at Del Mar. Good luck to folks playing that. Our Fun in the Sun handicapping tournament returns this Saturday at ExpressBet. You pick the winners of the last 5 races at Saratoga, the first 5 races at Del Mar. It's a win bet, $10 win bets on those horses, and it's a contest where there's $10,000 added by express bet that you'll play, try to win into the final table that'll take place over Labor Day weekend. So be sure to play those weekly Fun in the Sun handicapping tournaments. A lot of fun. Really, the entry is easy to get into, and again, you're just playing win bets. Last 5 at Saratoga, first 5 at Del Mar. You're probably handicapping those races most weekends anyway. Jeff and I will be back on Friday. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you then.